Good afternoon, everybody. Before starting with the presentation, I would like you to make a reflection about the following questions. Do you enjoy writing? Do you think of yourself as a writer? Maybe one of you want to be a famous writer. I truly believe that English language teachers love to write. So can you enjoy sharing with friends a draft of what you've written? And have you ever thought before about how will be a world without written language? Today, my partner, Maria Gabriela Aguirre, and me will talk about the written language. The spoken and the written language has been combined for centuries. However, written language have left a mark in this world, for instance, through iconic representation of reality such as pictograms or ideograms. Goody, 1977 states that writing is of fundamental importance not only because it preserves speech through time and space, but also because it transforms speech, abstracting its components and allowing for rereading. From my point of view, this is true. Stating Stop 1980 and Craig's 1982 ideas about written language. They agree on emphasizing the preservation of the memory of events as the primary function of written language. All this background that we have been carrying during generations are part of our culture and have enriched our ways of living. Written language has been the tool to preserve our historical memory. According to Casamiglia and Tucson, 2012, the written text can be consulted, analyzed, and it remains unchanged. It is the testimony of the history of the individual and the community. Moreover, Kunzberg's 1986, citing Casamiglia and Tucson 2012, states that the word of literacy has evolved with time. While it had a moral value in the 18th century, it has since been given a cognitive value. Writing is therefore non-neutral, rather it is influenced by certain ideologies. In addition, literacy was suggested by UNESCO as a requirement for upholding human and civilized values. So according to the importance of written language, let's talk about the prototypical written enunciation situation. In this case, according to Casamiglia and Tucson 2012, they characterize it by the following features. The first one, the independent and autonomous performance of individuals who communicate through a text. Specifically, they are referred to as writers and readers. Letter B, communication takes place in absentia. Its participants do not share either time or space. And finally, as it involves different interaction, the text must contain the necessary instruction for interpretation. It can be inferred that this situation allows the cultural and social environment to influence the discourse practice. The written language is subject to institutionalized learning, which takes place in instruction and education sectors. So as EFL teacher, we should be aware that writing is a complex activity that requires exercise to help students grow up as social beings part of a community.
Hi, this is Gabriela Aguirre, and I'm going to be talking about some more important aspects to take into account when doing discourse analysis. In terms of written discourse, it is discovered that in societies where writing has become ingrained in people's habit and ways of life, a wide range of texts have been produced in various domains of social life. These texts have been classified into genres such as academic, scientific, religious, or among others. And these are linked to culture and society. Calzamilla and Tucson explain that these written activities are tagged socially, and it is seen that different type of texts can be generated depending on the status or role that each person has in a society. Like when a chef, for example, writes a recipe or a teacher writes exams. And how do we understand these different discourse, written discourse? From a psychological perspective, two cognitive processes associated with language expressions are involved in written text. The first one is the production process, which we know as writing. And Flower and Hayes developed a model which involves other processes such as planning, textualization, and revision that are monitored by the writer while the activity of writing progresses. The other process is the interpretation process, which has been studied under two main models, which we already know. They are the bottom-up model that is about recognition of symbols before the semantic interpretation. And then we have the top model, which goes in the opposite direction, starting from the perception of the text as a whole and goes successively through the levels from the most complex and the most basic until interpreting the whole text. And what are the things that we take into account when all these processes happen? First, we have non-verbal elements of writing. It is important to highlight that every characteristic of the text is important. In the nonverbal elements of writing, which have been called also paratext, according to Jeanette and Alvarado, are elements that go along with the text, the written text. And these are the material of the support, which could be the paper, of a book or a magazine or newspaper. It could be a screen if we're talking about an ebook. The format, which is the size and the length of the text. The typography and graphic design, which are like the size of letters, the fonts, and also the combination of these with other some semiotic codes, such as photos or icons that we can see in several books. And these come to be like the facial expression of the speaker, which are also important in a discourse. We also have linguistic textual characteristics of written discourse, and they play an important role when doing discourse analysis, all levels, from the graphic level, the morphosyntactic level, the lexical level play an important role and can give the reader an important insight to understand the written discourse, as well as the discursive and textual organization. We have the segmentation of a text, the punctuation, and even the title. All of this provides clues to the audience that can help understand the overall structure of the text, the author's intention when writing, and the perspective of the author. Written discourse is a complex but important process in the construction of cultural and social identity, since it shapes and preserves values, beliefs, and traditions, as well as transmitting knowledge from one generation to another. The written text is rich in several characteristics that make it unique in every type of genre. As English language teachers, we have this responsibility of training advanced readers with the ability to interpret the discourse of a written text. This is our reference, and thank you very much for your attention.